Today, we are talking about 5 changes that I think AGS needs to make to New World Aeternum as soon as possible. If you are watching this in 2024, these are my pipe dreams. Hopefully, if you're watching this in 2026 or even sooner, you might be able to comment saying that some of these things have been added, and that would be wonderful. But for now, these are my top 5 things that I think that AGS should change or add to New World. Before we dive in, if you have something else that you think they should change, or you disagree with one of my changes, add it below in the comments. The first thing I think they should add to the game is that progression up to level 45 should be free to play. Why 45? I don't know, I just like the number. I also think that it progresses you through a good amount of the main story, and around 45, you should be able to progress through most of the initial main story quest line and at least have a fight with Isabella to end out the story in the Shattered Mountains. It'll stop your progression right before you're able to move into Brimstone Sands, and at that point, you could decide to buy the full game to get to experience Brimstone Sands, the raid, the Sandworm, mutated expeditions, as well as all of the in-game expeditions that are locked past level 45. And as I'm saying this, maybe it should be 60 or 55 as the cap. I don't know. I like the number 45. So I think that they should make it free to play for those early initial levels. Maybe in addition to being free to play, you're not able to trade on the trading post, so that it doesn't mess up the economy in any way. People can make free accounts and then immediately start earning gold and trading. So have other restrictions on the game, such as in-game trading being disabled, as well as the trading post being disabled. But I think they could benefit greatly from having some free-to-play option that allows people to be able to try the game, get in, see if they like it before they commit $60 to the game. Continuing on, talking about leveling, I think the next change that they should make to the game is that progression after 65 should not stop. And although you can still cap your level progression at 65, I think that you should still be able to level up, and each level you get after 65 could give you additional rewards. Not only having it to where you could see the amount of levels that you've gained after 65, but also maybe a chest drops for every level after 65 you get. And that could just be another flair that is added to the game that lets people be able to show off how much time they've spent in the game. And I think that would be pretty neat, in addition to providing an additional way for people to receive rewards. And I wouldn't even mind if AGS handed out a new currency that can only drop from these reward chests, which means you have to level beyond 65 in order to possibly unlock additional rewards or to access a special vendor that has specific items that can be purchased by leveling beyond 65. I think that would be really neat. My third recommendation would be to add a system that lets people increase the gear score of items, so that when somebody finds a item that they really enjoy at a lower gear score level, they don't have to throw that away just to keep up with the current gear score progression. A great example I have of this is this sword that is a gear score 622 and requires level 55. I used this sword for a lot of my in-game progression up to 65 because Keen, Vicious, and Keenly Empowered were really good, and I liked them. But now that I am max level and able to buy 700 gear score items, this weapon is no longer useful for me. But I would love to be able to use it outside of Arena and OPR, where this weapon is scaled to 700. What I would love to be able to do is take this 725 gear score item that I received from the Cutlass Keys and be able to merge it into this sword to be able to give it boosted stats so that this sword could benefit from a gear score higher than 622. Of course, I understand that there are other games that have done this. The first one that comes to my mind is Destiny. I believe in Destiny 2, they incorporated some system that you could do this. I haven't played it in a number of years, but I remember being able to take a older gun that I enjoyed using and smash a new gun into it to increase its gear score, or whatever they call it in Destiny. Light? light score, light gear, something like that. I would even be okay if when I take this 725 item and mash it into this 622, if it only received 50% of the gear score. So it brings it up to a 670 sword instead. And then I have to mash another 725 sword into it to bring it up to 695. And then I have to mash another one into it to bring it up to 710, and so on and so forth. I would even be okay with that if it was able to give me the ability to take this older gear that I enjoy and raise it up to that newer level. So yeah, third recommendation, let me keep my old gear score items and give me a way to make those items relevant in higher end content. Before we get to tip number 4, if you are finding the video useful or you enjoyed it all so far, I would greatly appreciate if you liked it. And if you disagree or agree or have another recommendation that you would like to see added to the game, put it down below in the comments. Let's get a conversation going. And who knows, maybe somebody from AGS sees this and uses the recommendation. At least that's the pipe dream that I have. As always, hit that subscribe button while you're down there. My fourth recommendation or thing I would like to see them add in is to find ways to scale older content. I don't think this really applies much to PvP, seeing as OPR and Arena scales all of your gear to 700 and really is irrelevant as far as it goes for scaling content, as well as wars and invasions and nightly races. All of those things scale pretty well. I think the biggest problem with PvP, which I think Cutlass Keys tried to solve, is that there's not enough to do. I think nightly races and wars is the end game for PvP, and that does provide a good amount of content for PvP people. But I think having different arenas and different OPRs would probably be the push for PvP. But when it comes to PvE, I think if somebody is strictly concentrating on PvE content and has no interest in PvP, within a few weeks, they are going to grow tired of this game and will bounce off to find other games to play. There is nothing that is keeping somebody around for PvE content, and I don't think the problem is that there isn't enough to do, because as it currently stands, there are 12 expeditions in this game, 3 daily soul trials, 2 seasonal trials, the Sandworm Elite Trial, and the Hive of Gorgons raid. That is a lot of things for PvE-centered people to do, as well as completing the entire main story questline and all other side quests along the way. The only problem I see is that the raid is very in-game content that requires you to find a group because there is no in-game group finder. Same can be said about the Elite Trials, and this requires 20 players. And also the same can be said about the Season Trials. These 3 pieces of content for most players is completely out of their league, because they're not going to go through the trouble of finding a group. They're not able to find a group, or they find a group, but that group requires them to already know all of the mechanics and to have maxed out gear. That leaves soul trials, which you can do 3 a day, and expeditions. The only problem with the expeditions is once you get into the late game, you're going to mostly be concentrating on the 3 mutated expeditions, and even that is limited to 2 a day that you can complete to receive this bonus. Of course, grinding Glacial Tarn right now for the Glacial Tarn set is very sought after, but what happens next week when these 3 mutated expeditions are useless for that person? There is no other incentive for PvE content for them to complete, and they are now going to bounce off and play another game, and they might never return. What I would love to see is that instead of having only 1 expedition that is scaled for level 65, all of these expeditions, once you hit 65, should be unlocked and scaled to your level. In addition, I don't think mutations should be limited to 3 a week. I understand what AGS is trying to do with that system, but if I'm a new player just jumping into the game and I really want to get the stopwatch from Thorpe in the depths, I am stuck waiting until this becomes a new mutation, which could take weeks. A great example of this for me is that I did not complete Barnacles and Black Powder for the first week of release when it was the mutation, so that I could get my Void Dark Plate. Now I am stuck waiting until that becomes a mutation again so that I can obtain the Void Darkplate armor. I don't think that encourages good gameplay. And also, if somebody is hinging on a piece of gear to finish out their build, they might have to wait weeks for that piece of armor. And honestly, I wouldn't blame them at all if they didn't wait and they just bounced off the game to play something else, because they're not able to enjoy this game because that one piece of gear is that important for their build. A good example of that would be Blood Drinker. I think Blood Drinker changes completely a lot of builds out there, and if you didn't get that last week, you are out of luck until that rotation comes back. And not to limit it just to this, I think it is wonderful what they've done with the Elysian Wilds with these roaming world bosses, and I would love to see that released in other areas as well. Give me a reason to go back to Monarch's Bluff, which is a level 1 to 17 area, when I am a level 65. This area here where I started the game gets no love from me because I have no reason to go back here. But if you threw a roaming boss here that drops a really cool item, it might encourage me to go back for that item, thus increasing my access to all different regions of the map. I think this is one good move that they made with the elite chest runs, in that elite chest runs gives you a reason to go to various regions across the map and complete various chest runs there. But I do not think that that should be limited to just high-end areas. I think it would be pretty cool if each region on the map had an elite chest run area that low-level people could stumble across and encounter very high-level enemies that they are not able to go into this region, and could give them an incentive to push to the higher levels so they could complete that content, and give high-level people a reason to come back to these areas. And I know people might be saying that there's no reason to put that on low-level people, but the thing I would push you to remember is that even if you take this game slowly, most people should be able to hit max level within a dozen hours or so. And in a game that wants you to stay around for hundreds of hours, Monarch's Bluff becomes useless to me after my first 3 or 4 hours in the game. Finding a way to bring back old content or lower level regions is a huge recommendation that I would say AGS needs to do. And even if they don't do it with the regions, I think they need to incorporate a mutation system that lets people run all of the expeditions at any given time with a mutation. I think a great way of doing this would be to let us at least run M1 mutations on all of the expeditions, but then lock down M2 and M3 and possibly even add another difficulty, M4, and lock that behind 3 weekly ones. This still lets people search for their artifacts and obtain their artifacts, but then gives us something to push for each week for higher rewards. And make M4 dungeons give a currency, much like Cutlass Keys, that we can use at a special vendor. I feel like that might be its own other recommendation, but we'll throw that in on this one as well. And last, but certainly not least, especially for me because I love PvP, I think this game is in desperate need of some ranked PvP. I think when I go into arenas, I should see a variety of different leagues. Give me a ranking like bronze, bronze 3, and I have to play in arena and rank up and continue getting better in order to get higher ranks for my league. I understand there are leaderboards, and I think this is a great push in the right direction, but anybody who actually thinks about this for more than a couple seconds will understand the flaw with that. And that is, if I wanted to be ranked number 1 in 3v3 arenas for wins, and I got to play 8 hours a day, and you only got to play a couple hours throughout the week, it doesn't really matter how much I suck. I'll be able to beat you and rank higher on this leaderboard than you. Even if you win 80% of the games you play and I only win 20, I'll still be able to beat you because I'll get more wins sheerly on the number of games that I am playing. And I think that's wrong. I think this entire section could greatly benefit from a ranked system where you have to complete games to gain experience, to grow your ranking and get better in a league. a seasonal league ranking system. I think the game could greatly benefit from that. And guys, that is my 5 things that I think AGS should add or change to this game. As always, if you found this video useful or entertaining in any way, I would greatly appreciate if you did all the YouTube things, like, comment down below, and subscribe. Be sure to check out my New World playlist with all of my other various different videos on New World, and I can't wait to see you guys in Aeternum.